Hello and welcome to the Financial Wellness Hour. I am your host, Hirsch Serman, and I am thrilled to have you join us on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. This show is for those who want to learn more about creating financial wellness, and we're going to look at different life cycles. We're going to explore them financially and emotionally, because personal finances are usually not about the money itself, but actually your emotions associated with your finances. And the healthier we are emotionally, the better decisions we tend to make. Although we're going to be somewhat general, we'd love to have your input. We'd love to hear from you, make it more relevant. So please reach out to me through my website, lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial. Or you can post your comments and questions on YouTube, Facebook, or the other platforms you might be listening to this on. You know, this is such a crazy part of the year for me. I cannot believe we're already about to hit November. We're about to embark on all the holiday seasons. We got Thanksgiving, we got holiday parties, we got family get-togethers, work get-togethers. Sometimes we look at everyone else seemingly happy and our insides are in turmoil. And then we got to top that off by finding that perfect gift on everyone on our list. And the list does go on, right, of what's going on in this time of the year. While for some, the holidays are a time of joy, but for many, it's kind of a time of stress and anxiety. The holidays can be very challenging for someone contemplating divorce or even in the process, or maybe newly single, but it doesn't have to be. That's the good news. Jackie Pilossoph, founder of Divorce Girls Smiling, joins us today. Jackie is a columnist, a best-selling author. We're going to talk about that more later. She's a podcast host, so much more, and happily I can call her a friend. We've known each other, I don't know, I'm not even sure, 6+ years probably, and done quite a few different things together, which have always been enjoyable. And I love having you on the show. This is not the first time, it will not be the last. And we always seem, a lot of it seems to revolve about holidays and how to become a divorce girl smiling yourself. So I like the input that you always give. And today, I think we're going to discuss, you put out a wonderful article. I encourage people to go to divorcegirlsmiling.com. They can see it. It is all about creating a holiday season that is different to maybe the ones that you've had. It's called The Importance of Self-Love During the Holidays. And I think that's so important. Jackie, it's always so nice to have you on. Thanks for joining.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Hirsch, and for those nice words. I appreciate it. I feel the same way.
All deserved, absolutely. And, you know, you have, I think, just such a wonderful story. There's so many practitioners now in the divorce space that have that personal story. And I'm going to ask you share yours, because I do think it's powerful, see what you've created out of it and the passion that's behind it. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit, that would be wonderful.
Yes, sure. So I'm a journalist. I'm a former TV reporter and Chicago Tribune writer and columnist. So obviously, I like to write and broadcast. So when I got divorced, the floodgates opened and I just started writing about things that were causing me pain and anxiety. And that's really how Divorce Girl Smiling was born. I was 41. I had 2 toddlers. I lived in Chicago where I had no family. I didn't know one divorced person. And we're talking about 2008, when there was nothing online, like, all these wonderful resources. There was no such thing as divorce coaches and certified divorce financial coaches like Hirsch. And there was really not the resources and any support or community for me. And that made divorce really, really hard for me. And I think that's what drove my whole business.
Right. And I will refer people again to divorcegirlsmiling.com. There's a tremendous amount of resources. There are articles, there are podcasts, there are professionals on there that Jackie has vetted. It's an amazing community, and you can join it just online or Facebook or plenty of places. But I find a lot of people get tremendous insights and resources from following you. So thank you for that. I think that's important. on behalf of the 20, 30,000 people that engage, I'm going to say thank you. But, I love the article because I think sometimes people approach this with dread. And you saying, you don't have to do that. Let's look at a way to, I think in some ways, reframe where you are, who you are, and let's move forward. And you mentioned, for example, the first two things you mentioned are physical and emotional wellness. And I'm taking the liberty of putting them kind of side by side in our discussion because I think they impact each other as well. So they are two separate items that you got to think about, but without even realizing it, sometimes they overlap and impact each other. So help us understand a little bit more about the emotional, the physical wellness, and why these are so important.
Well, I think for all women, whether you're getting divorced or not, and men too, the holidays are really stressful. So when you add in, oh, now I have to go home and visit my family and tell them all I'm going through a divorce. That is what happened to me. That was like traumatic. Right. And so when you talk about emotional health and physical health, if you're stressed like that and you have this on your mind and you don't know how to cope with it, it is eventually going to stress you out and stress your body out. And then you're going to suffer physical symptoms, or I shouldn't say you're going to, but you could. Like, right. For example, the year I got divorced, I got the worst flu I've ever had in my entire life. Hirsch, I can never remember being that sick. And I think it was caused just because my emotional state was so stressed that my immune system wasn't good.
Right.
And so it can affect you physically. And that's why that's just one reason it's so important to take care of yourself emotionally as
right.
well.
And I would say, there are some things in life that you get a paper cut, it's going to heal itself. It's going to be gone. You don't really need to pay it much attention. But God forbid you get a big gash or a wound, it's really probably not. And you need to get the right care. You got to kind of take care of it, make sure that it doesn't get worse. I think emotions and what you go through is a very similar thing, whether it's going to a therapist and speak to a counselor, whether it's having your support group, it could be your family. I think these are the things that, we kind of talking about. It doesn't get better. It doesn't get easier if you have nobody to talk to and you just bottle it up inside. It needs that release of whether it's talking, whether it's working through it, coming to grips with it. There's a lot of things that need to be done.
Well, I truly believe that even if you are the most emotionally healthy person who's never gone to therapy and is like, oh, I don't need therapy, if you're considering divorce or going through one, you need to have some support. And as Hirsch said, that might be a therapist one-on-one, that might be a divorce support group, a divorce coach, or I would say all of them, because you are not going to recognize yourself when you're going through divorce. An emotionally healthy person becomes a mess, a wreck, a disaster. Yeah. And that's okay. That's normal. You wouldn't be normal if you weren't like that. And you really need to get the help so that you can have a better divorce process and get through it better and not get sick and have all these physical problems, but also so you can have a good divorce outcome. So you make good decisions in the divorce. Like, for example, if you hire Hirsch to be your financial coach, you're going to have that support and you're going to get so much. You're going to make better decisions having the knowledge and having Hirsch kind of hold your hand and tell you things.
I agree 100%. And the other piece to that, which plays into everything you said, I was married, as an example, for 20 years. Okay. I had 3 kids. I have 3 kids. I didn't really even know who I was anymore. You become a couple and you give yourself over to the couple, and then you have kids and you give yourself over to taking care of the kids and making sure they have everything that they can have and that they need. And you really often lose who you are, and now all of a sudden you in this situation, which, who am I? And, you don't even know. And I think actually that leads into the next parts of your article. I've got it on the side here. Mm-hmm. You talk, and I'm skipping, I'm going to couple it two together. You talk about faith and you talk about believing in yourself. And I think sometimes going through a divorce is the time you lose the ability to believe in yourself, because you're not even sure who you are sometimes. So that spirituality, I think, is so important, connecting with yourself and outside of yourself. What do you think?
Well, it's funny because I always say your self-confidence goes into the toilet when you get divorced. Even if you're a really self-confident person, and even if you're the one who wanted the divorce, because people might be listening and thinking, well, I'm the one who left, and I could see if somebody's spouse left and they have no self-confidence. But in any case with divorce, you are under so much pressure, and you might be thinking, am I doing the right thing? Maybe it would have been easier to stay. Oh, I'm a piece of crap for leaving my husband. I feel so guilty. Maybe, what am I doing to my kids? So there's guilt, there's fear, there's maybe in your marriage, the two of you didn't have good communication, and you haven't heard that you were pretty or smart or kind in about 3 years. So your self-confidence is suffering. And so what support does, divorce coaches in general, I would say specifically divorce coaches, they help you get that back. And Divorce Girl Smiling, I'm not a divorce coach, but I connect people with divorce coaches who I think are a good fit for you. But I also write so many articles offering support and why you should keep that self-confidence and have belief and faith in yourself. And you kind of have to dig deep and say, this is who I am, and find who you were and all of those wonderful parts before you started down this bad road in marriage. And then also faith in God, in the universe. We always hear the universe has your back. God has your back. God will take the wheel for you. And I really believe this is not about religion or what faith you are, whatever faith you are, just God and spirituality in general to lean on is very comforting and such a healthy way to cope with divorce.
No, I agree. And being able to have that time to be able to focus on yourself and learn who you are again, to be able to have that belief. I'll tell you, I was that person who made fun of the yogis and, the person who had no self-care at all. And then when I went through a divorce, I got introduced to somebody about meditating, and it grew from there. And it's not over 10 years that I've been doing this. But I think being able to reconnect with myself, being able to have some objective opinions like a divorce coach will give you, because we are not objective, especially not going through a divorce. These were some of the things I think that were major components of getting me through and being able to thrive afterwards, because it can be a spiraling effect, or it can be an enormous opportunity as well. So I think, you have a choice, and it's a hard choice sometimes to do that work and dive in, but I think it's important that people do it. It's amazing.
I'm so glad you brought up meditation, because there's a lot of people listening who might be rolling their eyes and saying, oh, that doesn't work. It's so granola-ish. But yoga and meditation are actually being used, like the hospital system in Chicago, North Shore. They actually have people working for them to help people with yoga and meditation, because it is a form of medicine that will help you. And believe me when I tell you, if you feel like you need medication and pills, I'm a huge proponent of that. There's no shame in getting on an anti-anxiety medication. But in addition, yoga and meditation will help you manage your stress, and it carries over into your everyday life. So if you say, well, what's the use? I'm in there for an hour, I'm doing a yoga class or meditation. What's going to happen to your brain is that when you get stressed and something bad happens, like you get a call from your lawyer saying, oh, I hate to tell you this, but your ex is suing for sole custody. Right. Your reaction to that is going to be so much different if you practice meditation and yoga, because your brain is being trained to breathe better, handle the news, react in a different way. Say to yourself, well, I'm not an abusive parent, so there's no way a judge is going to allow this. This is my ex bullying me and trying to intimidate me. Versus when that happened to me, which it did, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my case. I was freaking out and crying, and, and so that is the difference.
The other thing that's amazing, I think sometimes, especially meditation, has a little bit of a misconception around it. A lot of people are like, I don't have half an hour, 45 minutes to meditate. And research actually shows about 5 or 6 minutes a day can be incredibly beneficial. And I think everybody's got 5 or 6 minutes that they can take, right? It doesn't have to be this enormous commitment. It really can be 5 or 6 minutes a day, and that's all you need. And it can really rewire your brain.
I'm so glad you're saying that, because that was the next thing I was going to say. People think you have to devote hours to it, and even just a little bit is very helpful. Boy, we are in sync.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. So again, I think there's a lot to this article, and we've only covered 3 or 4 points, and I think we could probably have a show on almost every single one of them. So that's always a good thing as well. You did mention how so many people are concerned about everyone else, and they kind of forget about themselves, and I think it plays a little bit with the self-care and the faith and the belief in yourself, but it's a little bit, I think this is different, right? I'm not talking about pampering yourself and going to a spa for a week. Well, that might be nice, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about making yourself feel special. One of the examples you give in the article is somebody walks through the mall and they smell that perfume, and they've always liked the perfume, but they keep walking on, right? That's maybe treating themselves. What are some of your thoughts around, like, why was that one of the big pieces that you had in your article?
Oh my gosh. So I think people in general, when you think of the holidays, you think, okay, what am I getting for so-and-so? What am I buying for so-and-so? You're thinking of your shopping list. Then you're saying, all right, what am I making for Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving dinner? What exactly are my dishes? Who am I inviting? What am I doing? Oh, I got to get my holiday cards out. I have to do this. It's always about other people, and that's beautiful. And that's the way the holidays should be. But just don't forget that you should be on that list too. And the best example I can give is I was recently on a trip. I just got back from Greece. That could be a whole nother podcast, which I already recorded with someone. But it was a trip, a gift that I gave myself. I had never done anything like that for myself. And when I was there, I saw, I was shopping in these little shops and thinking, oh, I'm going to get this for my sister. This is perfect for my mom and my sister-in-law. And I bought all these gifts. And then I saw this bracelet and I was like, oh, I love this. It's beautiful. Who can I give it to? And then I was like, wait a minute, I can give it to myself. And so women don't think that way. And we need to think about that a lot more. We need to be more selfish. What does selfish mean? It means looking after your own desires. That is the technical definition of selfish. And most people think that that's a negative thing, like, oh, you're so selfish. But selfish can be really good sometimes, because then you allow yourself to do more for other people because you have fulfilled taking care of yourself.
I think that's amazing, because in that way also you may never have set a boundary with your spouse. Well, be selfish, I'll put that in air quotes for the podcast people, but you can be selfish and set a boundary by taking care of your needs, and that can be tremendously beneficial as well. And it's so funny you say that. And by the way, I just want to point out that I don't think it's just women who run through that, because in June I was in England. I took a trip to England and I bought presents for everyone else, and somebody actually said to me, oh, what did you get for yourself? And I was like, nothing.
But Hirsch, you're not like other guys.
So
you're unique. But no, I agree with you. It's men and women. I shouldn't have just said women.
No, I'm just saying it doesn't matter where we tend to think of others, or hopefully, as good people do, we tend to think of others and we sometimes forget about ourselves. And this also, I think, plays into what you were saying earlier around believing in yourself, because sometimes we've been in a let's say, for lack of better terms, an abusive relationship, and we might not feel we even worthy of a bracelet, which doesn't seem like a very big thing in the large scale, but really is. When you can do that and treat yourself and think, well, I am worthy of, even if it's a small gift, it's something that builds that confidence and builds that belief in yourself as well.
Absolutely.
And we got to take a break. Sometimes we get into these conversations, I lose track of the time, so I've always got to look at the clock. Jackie, before we go to a break, share with people how they can get in touch with you.
Really easy. Just go to divorcedgirlsmiling.com, and that will take you to podcasts, the website, the trusted professionals, and you can sign up for my free consult there. So it's just one address.
And I would encourage, take advantage. If you take that free consult, you can learn tremendous amount. But one of the other things when you go there and people are posting, and this is on your Facebook group as well, I see you are incredibly engaged when people are asking questions. Whether it's your insights, whether it's they're needing a resource, and you've got a million of those as well, sharing those resources, people can really just get a lot of benefit out of going there. So again, we will be back, but we have to take that break. I'm Hirsch Serman, your host on WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, and we'll be back in a minute. Hello, and welcome back to WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. Today we have Jackie Pilossoph, the founder and chief editor of Divorce Girls Smiling, who is joining us. We are talking about self-love, the holidays, and the ultimate goal, being happy, which I think is such a great goal, and everyone should have that in their life. Jackie, you shared your background about being a media personality and using those skills to ultimately now not just get through it, but educate people in tremendous ways. So I think that people should go to divorcegirlsmiling.com and see what we're talking about with the journalistic expertise, but also the community that you've created there. We spoke about emotional wellness and the importance of physical wellness, how those two impact each other so tremendously. Something that people have sometimes forgotten about is belief in themselves, having faith, treating themselves, being worthy, and sometimes having lost the sense of being worthy or the sense of who they are. Treating yourself, just being able to take a little piece of that holiday spirit that you give for everybody else and bringing it into your life. And I'm sure I'm trying to read my handwriting as we go, which is so difficult always as we speak. I'm sure there was more, but those were the larger concepts, I guess, of what we spoke about or what we have covered so far. And as I said, you offered a free consult to everybody. You speak with a lot of people, I know that, around feelings about what they're going through, about what's happening in their lives. And I know you're a big champion of finding things to be grateful for. You've expressed it in your own life, especially sometimes you've posted some vulnerable posts of when you're struggling with things, but ultimately find gratitude. Share a little bit more about gratitude, why it's so important, what it does for people.
Well, Hirsch, I'm sure you can relate to this. When you're going through a divorce, the entire universe is the divorce. You can't think about anything else. You meet with your friends. All you talk about is your divorce. You never ask them how they're doing.
Right.
I'm generalizing, of course, but you you become very self-centered, which is understandable. I'm not saying people shouldn't be doing this. You
Right.
can't help it. You're traumatized, you're devastated, and all you're thinking about is, am I going to have enough money? Can I stay in my home? Are my kids going to be okay? Am I going to be alone forever? Is my ex going to take my kids away? Whatever it is that you're worried about, I call it the worry du jour. And you're not focused as much on what you have. So what I learned over the years, and what I tell people, is that whenever you're worried about something, let's say you wake up and you say, oh, my court date is in 2 days and I'm really nervous. Instead of thinking about that, you almost have to talk to yourself and say, okay, as I'm laying in bed here, is this how I want to start my day? Or do I want to say, what am I doing today that I can make this day a good day? Am I making a difference in the lives of other people? Let's start with my kids and how appreciative I am that I have these 2 healthy children and I get to see them today. God gave me a day that I can wake up again and have a day. It's that basic. I have a roof over my head. I have food on my table. I'm getting together with one of my best friends for lunch today, or my business is going well. Anything you can think of that's going well, just focus on that. Don't focus on the problem of the day, because you're always going to have something. But if you shift to the gratitude, the problems seem a lot more manageable. And what does it help worrying anyway? What does that
Right.
do? Nothing.
You mentioned earlier being aligned, our thinking, and I am so on board with this. I had a client, actually, you gave the example of their court. So this was about 3 weeks ago. It was Sunday. They texted me and they said to me, I've got court tomorrow. I'm so nervous. And my response was, wow, that's wonderful. You're going to be one step closer to this nightmare you're living being over. Right. So sometimes reframing even what seems like a daunting negative, piece of this process, if you can think about it even a little bit differently, that, this is a court date and they were hearing the child custody piece, not a small, kind of thing, but it was one step closer to being done with this difficult process. And they looked at me. I'm sure they would have looked at me kind of weird. They responded, are you always this positive, or is this just for your clients? I do think that having that in your life, and I try to be that for myself as well, and my kids and those that are around me, I think being able to try to reframe these things can take you so far beyond where you think you can go in this time. I've had people say to me when I said to them, how are you doing? They say, well, I got dressed and my clothes matched. So that was their accomplishment. Okay, great. You didn't want to get dressed. Let's even start with that, right? So
There's a guy I know, and every time I run into him, I say, like, oh, hi, how are you? And his response is always, well, I'm up, I'm alive, I'm walking around, and I feel good. He says that exact same thing. Probably he said it to me 30 times. I
right.
love that.
Yeah. It's much better than being scared of asking him how you doing, which is such a common question, right? So, and talking about gratitude, talking about, the things, I don't even remember. I was trying to think about it earlier. It's got to be 4 or 5 years ago. You and I actually did a show also on the holidays, and it was via Zoom. It wasn't a podcast. And one of the things you spoke about was, and this really stuck in my mind because it's something I've shared with my clients. You spoke about showing up even when you don't want to. And the example you actually gave 2, but they were similar, was whether it's like a holiday party for your work or whether it's a friend get together. And that takes courage, right? Everyone's going to look at me. Everyone's talking about me. This is how I felt anyway. You think the focus is all on you and it's not in a good way. So showing up, having that courage, I think, is so important. What are your thoughts around being scared, about getting out of your comfort zone, being courageous? Talk more, share, because you have good things to say about this.
It's the biggest fear a newly separated person has. If I had to guess, it's the biggest fear. In other words, I'm no longer a couple. And when I was newly separated, I really didn't have that fear so much because I was only married for 7 years and I was single till I was 35. So I was very used to being by myself, but most people aren't. And that is very uncomfortable for them. And what I realized is I went to this party, I got invited. It was all married couples. It was like 10 or 15 married couples. I got to the parties and the party, and all it was all the husbands were on one side, all the wives were on the other with me, and I didn't feel weird at all. And what I want to tell people who are newly separated during the holidays is that I understand that it's scary and everything, but the scariest part is the fear before you go.
Right.
And there's a fine line between forcing yourself to go to something and then giving yourself a break. And because there's two theories and saying, like, I just can't do it. My opinion would be force yourself to do it, but don't feel like you have to stay for so long. So if you're not having a good time, which I promise you, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, Jackie was right. I had a great time. I'm so glad I went. But if for some reason you're like, I'm not loving this, it's okay to leave early. Just dip out. Don't even say goodbye. Nobody's even going to notice.
You don't need to be the first one there, and you don't need to be the last one there.
Absolutely. And you'll be so glad that you actually just did something. And it's very empowering to say, I went to a party by myself and I was okay.
All right, we got one more on your list, and that was culminating all of this into self-love.
I know that's another thing that goes in the toilet when you get separated. You don't love yourself. Why don't you love yourself? Because you just got out of a really shitty marriage. Am I allowed to say shitty on the show?
I'm not
All right. Okay. So you're not loving yourself because of your marriage. You're not loving yourself because you don't have confidence because now you're like, I failed in my marriage.
Right.
Maybe you're not loving yourself because you can hear your spouse's criticisms of you all the time because you've been listening to it for so long. Maybe you just feel like I couldn't make my marriage work. Why? Because I'm the one who wanted the divorce and maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Or maybe, oh, my husband left me, so I must not be good enough. So all of these things are playing tricks on your mind. And how do you get self-love back? We could do a whole show on that.
Oh, I know.
But my biggest tip I can give you if you want to have self-love is do for others. If you just live your life of, I'm going to call this elderly person who I know is alone on the holidays, and I'm going to go over and bring her some cookies and visit an elderly person or somebody in the hospital, or I'm going to help my son's friend get a job because he just graduated college and I have all these connections, or I'm going to just call an old friend and say, I'm sorry that we had this falling out and I want to get back in your life because I love you. Anything you do to make this world a better, happier, more joyous, peace-filled place is going to precipitate and make you love yourself. And I truly believe that's the biggest way to get self-love. Volunteering, giving of yourself. Even like if you're one of those people who just doesn't feel it right now for the volunteering, give a $20 donation to somewhere and it will make you feel like, wow, I just did something with my day that is helping somebody else. Do you think that works?
I think that's wonderful advice. I really do. It gets you out of your head, but also as you give love, you get it back. And that's a big
100%.
All right. So I promised we'd come back to your best-selling author, the book. I'm going to preface it with two things. One is, if this didn't work, this Divorce Girl Smiley, you could absolutely have gone into party planning. Your kickoff was wonderful. I was very happy I could make that. The other piece to it is, sometimes we look at, I know I did, looked at people who are 8, 10, 15 years out of their marriage, and I saw they were doing so well. And you give that impression, and I think from knowing you, you are really in a good place. it's not always that way. And you wrote a book a little bit about, I tried this, I tried that. This one didn't work. This date didn't work. This was an awful one. This one just didn't click. So share a little bit more, because I think the book, it has some comedy to it. It's got some drama. It's almost like Netflix in a book. It's got action. It's got drama. It's got romance. So,
well, thank you, Hirsch. I really appreciate
how people can get it also, please.
I really, really appreciate it. So I want to show the book. It's called Who Let the Dogs Out? And it's an empowering, funny, and inspiring guide to dating after divorce. And I want to tell your listeners, I spent 10 years as a single person dating after divorce before I met the love of my life, who is chapter 11 in the book, who was going up to everyone at the party saying, "Hi, I'm chapter 11." And there was one other dog at the party. And every chapter is a relationship and a guy that I was with and one woman. And I talk about what I learned. And at the end of each chapter, after you read the story, which really reads like a novel, you might be laughing, crying, horrified, being like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know Jackie as well as I thought I did." And then at the end of each chapter, I give practical advice so that you don't make the same mistakes I did and identify red flags quicker, so that you won't have to wait 10 years to meet Mr. Wonderful. And the book is available at datingafterdivorceguide.com, which just takes you to Amazon, or you can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere books are sold.
So I encourage, it's a great read. I must be honest, I've read about 80% of it. I haven't read it all, but the parts I've read so far have been great. I've loved it. So I encourage people. It gives you some nice insights. It gives you some laughter when you need it, but it also gives you, as Jackie said, some great practical advice. Jackie, thank you. I'm going to encourage people, go to divorcegirlsmiling.com. You'll find an enormous amount of wonderful information, other people going through what you're doing, professionals you might need, blogs, podcasts. There's really a whole community there for people. And Jackie, it's always a pleasure having you on. I am Hirsch Serman, your host for the Financial Wellness Hour. Please reach out to me on my website. It's lifecycle.financial. Again, that's lifecycle.financial. I look forward to having you join me in 2 weeks again. And again, always thank you, Cece, who is behind the scenes. Make it easy and fun for me and Jackie and all my guests to just have a great conversation and be able to share the information we do. Thank you all. Have a great week and enjoy the rest of your day.